We're rounding out your consumer concerns from banking to shopping and more. This is Money Talk. Hi everyone, I'm Joy Dumandan, consumer editor with the U.S. Sun. Money Talks is diving into the world of tiny homes. We had a chance to sit down with the folks at Realtor.com to dive deeper into the tiny home takeover. Also, digital banking is everywhere and people are getting locked out of their accounts. You'll hear how customers are navigating going cashless. And lottery winners are speaking out about the jackpots they've won, but becoming an instant millionaire isn't guaranteed. A look into those one-time decisions. And self-checkout lines, you've seen them, you've stood in them, and you've scanned on your own. We are sharing shoppers' stories. Let's start though with frozen funds. In this age of digital banking, people are using smartphones to tap and go or debit cards to pay, and all those transactions add up. This proved to put a Fifth Third banking customer without access to money. The person who remained anonymous vented on a Reddit thread dedicated to personal finance that they sent money through the Zelle platform. It was linked to their Fifth Third account. After several transactions, the poster said when they tried using their debit card and logging into their banking app, it said the account was locked. A banking customer service representative told the user the account was closed due to so many transactions. The user claimed the bank viewed them as fraud and decided not to do business with them anymore. Meanwhile, a Truist Bank customer was left confused after her account was abruptly closed. The 22-year-old college student shared her story on Reddit asking for advice. She explained she received a notification that she was locked out of her account. The user suspected it was her password and attempted to reset it, but after being unable to do so, she contacted customer service. She said the bank told her they closed her account after finding confirmed fraudulent activity associated with her other bank. The user said she considered the possibility of identity issue, lack of her credit score, or her income. She did not share what happened to her funds. Then there's a story of a customer who shared that they had their Wells Fargo account abruptly closed, not because of online transactions, but because of how they recorded their address. The user shared on Reddit that they received a letter last year telling them the address on their small business account needed updating. They claimed they were told it was sent to a P.O. box, which was no longer allowed, and they recalled logging into the account and adjusting that contact information, and yet Wells Fargo withdrew all their money out of his account and closed it. Now, at the time, the user was worried about getting his money back, but there is good news. They updated the thread claiming they received a cashier's check from Wells Fargo not long after they made that post. The U.S. Sun reached out to all of the above institutions for comment. Now, coming into a big payday comes with mandatory deductions like taxes. A Missouri lottery winner scored $1 million playing Mega Millions. She bought her ticket at a gas station and learned she was one number off from winning the big jackpot on December 26th. She's still walking away a winner though and has two options for receiving her money. There's the annuity option or the cash option. A group of Facebook players won $1 million from a scratch-off ticket. The group of five chipped in for the $50 ticket in Florida's newest scratch-off game called $1 Million a Year for Life Spectacular. The game was launched in February and this group bought their ticket at a Publix store in Jacksonville. The group elected to receive the one-time lump sum payment of $640,000 after taxes. A lotto player in New York is $9.6 million richer after matching the first 6 numbers, but he didn't walk away with all the money. Robert Retta of Suffern, New York received just over $3.3 million of that $9.6 million jackpot. Keep in mind that they have to pay federal taxes as well as state taxes on any winnings. Americans are getting creative when it comes to housing. Many are downsizing and turning to tiny homes. There are several factors to consider before you make that move. We sat down with Realtor.com. Claire, today we're talking about tiny homes. So tiny homes is truly a trend that has been taking off, and a lot of people are doing this. First of all, tell us a little bit about what constitutes as a tiny home.
That would depend on who you ask. Typically, a tiny home is considered 400 square feet or less, but some people will put it at 500 square feet, some will even say 600 square feet, but the true believers would probably say about 400 square feet or less, not including a loft.
It is quite a small space, but people really are turning to these tiny homes. Why do you think that is the case?
Affordability. It is so expensive right now to buy a home. Even renting a home is very expensive in most of the country. So, with mortgage rates high and then you have home prices high, people are looking at ways they can save money, and a tiny home is tinier. So you're condensing the square footage, and sometimes you can get a really good deal on a tiny home. Plus, if you're worried about things like your monthly utility bills, you're not going to pay as much to heat or cool a 400 square foot home as you would a 4,000 square foot home. So that's another thing that people are really looking at. Plus, some people don't want a big lifestyle. They want to get more, kind of shrink their life a little bit, own less things, have less of an environmental impact, live more simply. And I think a tiny home really appeals to those folks.
Give us an idea then how much a tiny home can cost.
Well, you can get a tiny home on Amazon for a few $1,000s. You'll have to outfit it, which is going to cost a lot more. Or you can go like high-end luxury tiny homes. That's a thing too. I've seen tiny homes that could be over 150K. It just depends on what you're looking for. But I do want to put the caveat that you can buy a tiny home, you can make a tiny home, but you're still going to have to pay for things like electricity, a sewage system if you want to use the bathroom. You're going to have to pay for plumbing. And sometimes you're going to have to buy land and get a foundation, and those things aren't cheap either. So that's going to contribute to your costs. Plus whatever applicable building codes or zoning laws you have to apply to.
And there really are many different levels of tiny homes, as you said, ranging in price from cheap to very expensive, depending on how you want to outfit it. But people are also turning to like tiny home villages or communities with prefab homes, and sometimes all of that is all inclusive.
Yeah, sometimes you can get all of it. It just depends on where you're looking, what you're looking for, where the tiny home village is, and what the local laws say.
So for people thinking about a tiny home, what are some of the benefits then if they're going to make that next step?
The first one is definitely cost. You're going to save a lot of money on buying a tiny home, on maintaining a tiny home. It's just a cheaper way of living. So I would say that's a huge one. There are downsides though.
Yes. Some of the cons?
Some of the cons would be you're in a tiny home. So if you're living with a partner, maybe you have a large family, it's just something to consider. Can I make this space work for me and my needs? If you're working from home and your partner is working from home and you're in a tiny home and you're both doing Zoom calls, it can be a lot.
We are here located in New York City, but what are some popular states where tiny home communities have been popping up? Because obviously here in the metro area it's very dense, but it appears that in the Midwest there are a lot of communities, but really if you even go farther south or north. But tell us some popular states where we can find these communities.
You can find tiny homes all over the country. It just depends on the zoning. Some places won't allow tiny homes, some places will. So we're seeing some more pop up in California, Tennessee, Texas, Delaware, but I was talking to a tiny home builder last week who was telling me that they have homes in Alaska, Hawaii, and pretty much everywhere in between.
So it's almost like figure out what kind of lifestyle you're looking for.
And then find a place that will allow you to have that lifestyle.
And finally, like people who do a weekly or monthly shopping trip, it's time to hear feedback from shoppers because we can all relate. Kroger has come under fire over a delivery debacle. A customer took to X, formerly Twitter, to talk about missing items from a delivery order. They wrote, "Of course when I go to try and reorder, the price is higher because the coupons I used the first time can't be used again." According to Kroger's website, customers should contact the store from which they picked up or placed their order and provide the address and phone number that appears on the receipt. An Aldi customer had the opposite experience, stating they'll stick with their ordering online and picking up their groceries after a not-so-great self-checkout experience. This person wrote on X, "I thought self-checkout would be less anxiety-producing, but I feel like you gotta move like the Aldi cashiers when you're checking out." She's referring to the fast-scanning employees at the traditional registers. Costco is not exempt from customer complaints. A Costco customer questioned the store's self-checkout system after multiple lanes were closed. The customer posted, "Does this defeat the point of self-checkout?" Then told Costco to get your act together. According to Costco's website, the store has found that most of its members purchase an average of 16 items per visit. This is how the store justified its decision not to include express lanes in its checkout options. Costco has also come under fire for its crackdown on memberships. This chain has started asking shoppers to show ID when they check out and to prove that they pay that annual membership fee. And keep in mind, policies and product availability will vary by location, and not everyone has an awful shopping experience. For more money news, check out our section on thesun.com.